Good morning and welcome to day 3 of your compass reset. And today we're going to talk about values from wanting. What do I actually want from my life to what do I actually need in my life? So, first of all, I just want to thank you all so much for being so patient with me with all of the technical issues I've been having. So I managed to build a very successful landing page. Tick. Very, very thrilled with myself. First time I'd done that. Managed to build a really good workflow. Tick. Really amazed. That one was a bit of a head scratcher. But what I managed to do was miss one tiny vital little thing, which meant you didn't get all of your emails as you should have done. You only had part of them. So hopefully the system is now triggered. You should start receiving your emails. And those that haven't got their emails yet, I'm just double checking I've got everybody in the system because you came in different ways because of my technical issue. So please accept my apologies. I've learnt so much, but I'm proud to say I have 2 days worth of videos uploaded, not perfect, but today is going to be so much better. I have your bonus SoundCloud audio uploaded and you can listen to that, bookmark it, and listen to it as many times as you want, because that bonus audio comes from yesterday's recording. And I can't begin to tell you, I'm so proud of myself. I'm going to brag because I actually spliced 2 pieces together and created a merged audio, which is a first. So I'm learning as I'm going along, and I'm proud that I'm able to share that with you because it's I never expected to be doing all of these things on my own at this point in life. Sometimes your expectations, your wants and needs don't always go the way you expect. So I'm in the learning phase, a big one. And I'm really sorry you've all been my guinea pigs because that was never the intention. But I'm so grateful for you being here, and I'm so grateful for you sticking with me on this journey because I can't begin to tell you how I know this will help you. I know how much it made a difference in my life when I started to learn and understand these things. And being able to share that with you is, well, it makes my heart absolutely sing. So your emails are sorted, your audio and video are in the work, and the workbook are in for yesterday. The audio went in this morning. Facebook eventually played games and gave me 2 videos, which I thought they would. So bad. Note to self, don't do things late at night because technical doesn't like you. So, but then I was working with clients yesterday, so it made it really tricky to fit everything in. But anyway, now I've gabbled on. Let's get going with this wonderful day. So again, I'm working from notes just because there's so much to share with you. Because day 3 today isn't about goals, plans, and decisions. It's about how we listen to ourselves more honestly, and actually how we understand how others are talking to us more honestly. And when I say more honestly for others, we do an awful lot of looking through rose-coloured specs with an expectation of how we want other people to react to us, with an expectation how we want other people to be in our lives. But of course, we don't rule them, we don't run them. We have to allow for for want of a better word, their failures. Their failures to see who we are, their failures to see our needs. And other people are going to be doing that to us as well. This is where we learn to forgive. This is where we learn to accept without a label attached. This is where we let go of expectation, because expectation can be such a rock on our back rather than a gift. This is about how we stay oriented for ourselves, how we stay true to our core, how we take action rather than inaction. Because our wants are not demands, they're information that we need. And I'll share it with you in a moment more about the differences between wants and needs. Because our wantings are often tangled up with disappointment, grief, guilt, fear, and shame. For some, that wanting is unsafe. For others, it feels selfish and unrealistic. But none of it means that we're doing anything wrong. We're just putting a higher expectation on it because we're not forcing desire. We're actually surrounded by so much in our lives that tells us we need it. You look at all the advertising boards now, that most of them are electronic. While you're sat in that traffic, you are drawn to this huge board that's on the side of the road. And it's busy telling you that you want the latest car, you want the latest office, you can go and hire the latest office. Oh, and this new drink is coming out, and oh gosh, there's fast food on there as well. So many things you are being bombarded with. So it works on this sense of lack that's going on in your mind. And you're not aware of that sense of lack because, again, it's an unconscious thing that we carry. And so you're gravitating towards, oh, I've got to get off this road. I've got to get something to drink. I can't wait to go and get something to eat. Oh, that's convenient. I'll just stop over there. So then you end up making choices that are not as healthy for you. Or you set store on expectations. Oh, this car is a pile of, I've really got to get another one. And I really like the look of that car. And I'm going to go and have a look. And then you start to set expectations of, oh, well, I've got to get the money together for that. I've got to save that. I want, I want, I want. And it becomes a never ending cycle. But we don't do it consciously, we do it unconsciously. Because if we did it consciously, we'd drive ourselves nuts. But how many times do you find yourself drawn to something that you really don't need or want, but you're just drawn? It's like a magnet pulling you along, and you're not able to resist. We've all been there. We've all done it. My weakness, and I will put my hand up, my weakness is fudge. I don't need it. But if there's good fudge being sold and it's homemade and handmade and smells delicious and looks unctuous, what do? I buy myself a little portion. And it's always a little portion because I could pig out on a big portion. So that's not a need, it's a want. And it's a want that often overrides what's happening in my world if I've gone out for the day somewhere. In my head, going, I don't need anything today. I'm just going to look, I'm going to observe. And then I come back with a little packet of fudge. We all do it. So it's not about forcing desire because we can't force desire. But we have this little worm that goes on here in the back of our heads, and it will create the want and override the need, which then ends us in other troubles. We can end up in financial troubles because we end up spending too much. And this is where people become surrounded by boxes of shoes and bags and clothes, and their wardrobes are bulging at the seams, but they actually don't wear or use any of the items because they're assuaging a want that our body has created, our mind has created, to cover up the emotions of something they've lost. And often those things come from experiences in our childhood where we actually were denied so many things as children. And because we were denied them as children, it's like being in a candy shop when we're older. And we don't know how to turn the off, because the want in our unconscious mind becomes something we have to have, becomes a habit, it becomes something replacing something else. And what we're doing by doing this values work is we're making space for our needs to re-emerge from underneath the wants. Now, that might sound a bit strange to you, but actually our needs are the foundation that we build our lives on. Our needs are how we propel ourselves forward safely in life. Once our needs are provided for and well tended and well kept, all the wants could follow on top really happily without being too impactful on our lives. Now, we can't solve every want. I want my daughter in my life. I want to know my grandchildren. But I can't solve that want because she also needs to recognize the loss, and she also needs to make the step towards reconnection. My need is to ensure that my foundation is strong and healthy, that I have done the emotional work, and I have done masses, the emotional work that brings me to a healthy place so that when she comes and knocks on my door, I am able to welcome her in without guilt, fear, shame, but also without judgment. And judgment is one of the things I learned very early to let go of. And it has served me so well in this last few years of learning how to put myself first, how to really value my needs, and how to nurture those needs. And those things are so important in our world. But we're not taught how to do that as children. And the language that was mirrored to us when we were children is very different to the language that we mirrored to our children and that they are mirroring to their children. It's a constantly movable feast every generation. And we either learn to understand it and become familiar with it, or we become what's commonly termed a dinosaur. And we actually can't relate because we haven't made the effort to learn. And these are big things in our world, really big things, much bigger than we realise. And our values, they support us, but they strain us at the same time. When we're under pressure, the values that we carry organise us around coping, around enduring. So it's about striving rather than thriving. And that's massive when you think about it. How many of you are truly thriving? I'll put my hand up and say I wasn't for a very long time because I wasn't aware, fully aware of how my values were impacting me. My values were really important to me, but I didn't understand that I was putting some of them on pedestals they didn't need to be on. I was burying others as deeply as I could possibly bury them without giving them the credence they deserved. And I didn't have a happy medium in between. And I could quite happily say, yes, I was busy caring for sick and dying parents. You know, both Simon's mother and my mother were very ill for quite some years before they actually died. So I had a lot of impact externally. I was still dealing with the abuse externally for many, many years. And my own value was slowly but surely dropping and dropping and dropping because I was putting myself last and I was putting everyone else up on that pedestal ahead of me. Do you know the person that should be on the pedestal is you? But not in an egotistical way, in a healthy and loving way. When you're on that pedestal and everybody else is equally spread out underneath, that's when your values are in the right place. And when we're in wanting, it goes quiet in the conditions of coping and endurance. So we want to be healthy, but we're coping and enduring a situation that doesn't allow us to make space for ourselves. So the want for exercise, for a walk in the park, for fresh air, just subsides and gets put on one side. And as we start to rebalance our values, wanting becomes accessible again in a healthier way. And it's a natural sequence. It isn't a leap, it isn't a jump for mankind. It's a leap that is not needed. And so we sit back and we can assess a situation. Now, what I want to show you is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And Maslow's hierarchy of needs is such an important part of our world. And I know that many of you will have seen this hierarchy of needs, probably on more than one occasion. But I'm going to bring it back down to the layers of human motivation. So we have physiological needs, and those needs are that we need fluid within our bodies to keep our bodies healthy. We need relationships, sex, and connection. We need food. We need to breathe. We need to be able to let go of bodily functions and allow them to work properly so that we stay healthy. We need to keep clean and care for ourselves, which takes us into safety. And it says here security of body, employment of resources of the family, of health and of property. This is about taking care of ourselves, self-care, which is not selfish. How many times do we need to be told it is not selfish to want to put ourselves first, to put the umbrella up to protect us from the weather, to wear that heavy coat when it's very, very cold, to put the boots on to protect our feet from water. But then there are the essentials, keeping ourselves clean, keeping our skin and our hair and our teeth, our eyes and our ears, all of those things healthy, looking after our body, having contentment in our lives through work. So we're earning, we're providing for ourselves. Then we have community, which is another level of the physiological, belonging within a family, a friendship, the sexual intimacy that is so important in a loving relationship. Conversation, not arguments, not language wars, but real conversation. Because this is such a vital part of what we are missing as a community. That conversation with our family where we cannot speak healthily to each other. And it's not for lack of trying from our side. It's for lack of a boundary that we cannot penetrate. And that's not your fault. That's the problem with the person on the other side of the boundary. And then that brings us up to esteem, our self-esteem, how we value ourselves, how we have confidence in ourselves, how we can celebrate achievements, how we respect ourselves and others. And again, these are things that we have all struggled with for such a long time. Some are still struggling with those things now. Others have done some work and moved forward with those things. So, although they feel that energy from others when they say, "What did you do? Why did you do?" and their judgment comes towards you, you can often override that because you've done the work to bring yourself up to that place. So you can just ignore rather than feeling that you need to bite and say something back or that you need to defend yourself. And that's so important. And this is why I chose values for this first challenge, because values are such a big part of our self-esteem, how we hold ourselves and how we can rebuff other people's unpleasantness and how we can embrace the good stuff that comes our way. And then, of course, there's the self-realization, our morality, our creativity, being able to be spontaneous, our problem solving. Because when we're in that place of self-realization, we can say, I'm at A, I want to be at B, and this is the journey I'm going to take to get there. And if the journey gets a little bit scuppered, a little bit like my tech, then you relearn. You take a step back, you take a breath, and then you move forward again. And then there's this lack of prejudice that is such an important thing. There was a time when I was very prejudiced against the people in my life that were causing me such great harm. Because I was in such deep grief, I didn't know that I was prejudicing who they were, because I didn't understand the drivers, I didn't understand the behaviours, and so I was just putting them in a box of they're causing me harm. I couldn't see further than that lens, and I'm sure you've all been in that place. But actually, they've got stuff going on in their worlds that we're not aware of. And because they have that stuff going on in their worlds, it actually it ruins our understanding of it. So we only see the bad stuff. We can't see the way under the door that might allow us to speak to them in a different way that might actually bring up that relationship or that connection, or might actually plant the seed in them. And it's a big one. It's a really big one. And then there's the acceptance of acts. Now, acceptance isn't just about, oh, I'm accepting what's going on. Acceptance is how we learn to understand how we've been holding back on ourselves and how we can forgive ourselves for situations that we found ourselves in and how we can let go. And also how we can apologize to ourselves for those situations we found ourselves in and we can let go. They're huge. And when I discovered those in my early part of my grief coaching, my world shifted so substantially. I was quite stunned. And I know there are people in this group today that have seen me do this journey and have seen me change and have seen me going from being on the edge of victim that didn't want to be there to actually somebody more in charge of who I am now. Because I'm more aware of my needs, my wants, and my values, and where I place those things. And so this is a really important part of our journey, because all of these things, when our basic needs are met, each level becomes stronger in our lives. So once we've done all our foundation and our secondary layer, and then we have our middle sense of connection, our esteem and our self-realization become much higher. And we end up sitting on the pinnacle here at the top of Maslow's hierarchy. And that's massive, because when we're up here is when we have everything we need. And then we have this that I just thought was such a great way to visualize our wants and our needs, and how we could bring those together so that we can visualize more, when we're working through our values. So if you look at this emulates Maslow's hierarchy in a different way. Is it a basic need? And it's giving you an example there, food or shelter. So basic need is to feel emotionally well. A basic need is to be taking care of ourselves properly and not allowing our self-care to slip. Basic need is also not hiding behind a mask. I'll explain that one in a moment. So yes, it's a basic need. So we buy it or we nurture it if we already have it and it needs care. No, it's not a basic need. Is it an experience that I've saved for? Well, is it an experience I would enjoy or value? Yes, we buy it or we nurture it because some of these things we already have. No, we're going to put it aside for a couple of days. We're going to let it just sit quietly in the corner, and we're going to come back to it and compare it. Do we still want it? Yes, actually, we do still want it. It is important to us. We do need it. So we're going to go back and buy it, or we're going to nurture what we already have. We don't need it. We're going to save ourselves that money or that energy. And that's huge. If you can separate out all these things, I want a new car. Do I really need a new car? No. Is it the kudos of having a new car? Is it the experience of having a new car? What is it? It's a no. We're going to pop it on one side and think about it for a couple of days. Or actually, yeah, the car I've got just can't make that journey anymore. It's costing me far more, and I can't afford to do that anymore. So I have to be realistic and think about replacing it. So this is this constant cycle of looking at our wants versus our needs, which will also help us to sift out the different types of experiences that we're having with our values. If you can sit with it and just stretch that time a little bit, sometimes you can see that that value actually isn't for you at all. It's not serving you. It's not doing what you need it to do. And that's very powerful, because in that moment, you can make change. I'm going to stop the share. So, sorry about the hand. It raises automatically and I couldn't turn it off. So, what I'm going to teach you in your workbooks is about clearing the noise, which is what the wants versus needs is about. Because it isn't about blame. We can't blame ourselves for some of the experiences we've had. They've been unavoidable. We can't blame ourselves for not knowing how not to react at the time, because we were working on the mirrors of the things we learned when we were growing up. And we're working on the mirrors that other people reflect at us in this day and age. So when I talk about mirrors, they're the things that we learn from others, or the things that we we are repelled by. So when somebody judges us with the phrase, "What did you do?" the first thing we do is go, oh, we stick our feet into the ground and our insides go, and we say, "I didn't do anything. It was him. It was her. It was." So our body already reacts physically. Think about how you've reacted in the past and how your body has felt when people have said that to you. There's an old phrase, he bristled with resentment. She bristled with resentment. I remember that phrase as a child, and I just did not understand. To me, a bristle was something on the bottom of a brush. It was not an energetic reaction. But actually, that's exactly what happens in our bodies. Our body steps into defensive mode. And because it stepped into defensive mode, the words flow before we even know what we're saying. And we're already defending ourselves rather than being able to be more clarifying with what we say back, because we've become on the defensive. And that's because our values are askew. When your values are straighter, it's far easier to say the things you want to say in a calmer, more precise way, without being defensive, without having to stand your ground with too much energy. And so you come away from a situation where you feel happier. Now, it's interesting, isn't it? I'm going to take you back now to an experience I had that I've only really understood in later years. We lived in a beautiful lodge house on the end of a private estate in Oxfordshire. My ex-husband was the gardener to the estate, the head gardener. And in the mornings, I would get ready for work. I'd get my daughter ready. I'd have the breakfast on the table from the night before. Everything would be ready except the fresh stuff. So we'd have breakfast together, and I would take her into her room, and the night before she'd chosen her clothes for the day and she would get dressed. I would be helping her where she needed it, and I would be getting dressed, but keeping an eye on her. All the doors would be open throughout our lodge house, and it was all on the ground floor. It was all on one floor. So there was, lots of light, and we could hear each other and we could see each other quite well. And then I would go into the bathroom and I would put my makeup on. Now, that was a need for me. That was a need because I grew up with acne from the age of 10. And I had spent most of my young adult life in fear of the judgment and criticism that other people forced on me with their opinions about my skin. It wasn't the food I was eating. It wasn't diet. It wasn't a lack of taking care of myself. It was actually an underlying symptom of fibromyalgia. But I didn't know that until many, many years after the fibromyalgia was diagnosed. Because at the same time, I was experiencing intensely heavy monthly periods. And again, that is a direct relation to underlying fibromyalgia. I didn't know that. So in my head, I couldn't go out of the door covered in spots and lumps and pimples. I had to cover them up to feel comfortable in myself. A, because society told me I was ugly and I was disgusting. And B, because I was so aware of people looking at my face when I was at work every single day, because my face was the first thing they saw when they walked in the door in the dental practice. And so my need and my want was to cover it up. I actually went and had lessons to put my makeup on so that I wasn't wearing a mask, so that I was putting my makeup on quickly, cleanly, and tastefully, so that I didn't look like a clown every time I walked out the door, because that just absolutely turned my stomach. So my makeup took me less than 10 minutes to put on every day because I had perfected it. And I'd been doing it for a very long time. I'd been doing it ever since I was 17 years old, and I was getting into makeup. Something made my daughter cut the tops off my makeup brushes one day. And I had an absolute meltdown because I didn't have any brushes to put my makeup on with. And I was beside myself. And I have to forgive myself now because I didn't understand the deep sense of loss I was experiencing. But I also didn't understand the underlying insecurities that the acne I'd had from the age of 10 was having on my life, the impact it was making on me. And that came many years later when I was doing my first little coach training, my grief training, in a realization that my father had called me ugly and dirty. Not in so many words, but just in his lack of being kind. It was the way he blamed my mother for not looking after me. And that realization made me understand that I had been playing up to somebody else's opinion when actually I needn't have worried about it at all. But that opinion had created a massive value conflict for me, where I would not be worth anything to anyone else if I didn't look the part. Plus a zillion other values that were impacted. And it was then, as I started to do that, that I started to make change. And now I rarely wear any makeup. So rarely that you very nearly didn't get even just as much powder on my face today because I was a little bit frantic with the tech. But you can see how, with that example I've just shown you, how something so seemingly insignificant can have such a massive impact on our lives and for such a very long time if the value is askew. Because in that place, I thought, my father doesn't like me. My father doesn't want me. My father hates my mother. My father this, my father that, my father the other. Actually, he wasn't the best father, and he certainly wasn't the best example. But he tried with what he was mirrored. He was a war baby. He was evacuated from London into Wales and then brought back again. And everything changed constantly. And most of his family disappeared in Auschwitz and Belsen and various other places. So there was a lot of loss in his life that I truly never understood as a child, and actually as a young woman as well, making my way in the world. So there are a lot of things I've had to learn to forgive, not just for him, but actually for myself, for what I was carrying around. And that has come with looking at my values and understanding the things that are really, really important to me and learning how to reflect with the acknowledgement of the experience and how to change my lens, change my perception. And this is what we do with our values. But what I want you to do when you're doing this work is I want you to look at the feelings that you're having rather than the outcome, because they're safer than plans. And I want you to sit with the subtle answers that come to you, because the big answers aren't always the best ones. And I want you to trust what comes to you. One of the things that I do often is I get myself comfortable in the chair wherever I am, even outside sitting on an old tree trunk or whatever, or a bench in the park. And I just sit with myself. Put my feet to the floor, make sure my feet are in touch with the ground. I gently rest my hands on my knees. And I just take a moment to ask myself, what is it I need to know today? What is it I need? I do that in my head. I don't do it out loud unless I'm at home or I know I'm not going to be disturbed wherever I am. And I ask my unconscious mind to tell me, what is it I need to know about such and such? What is it I need to know about my values that I really need to work on today? And I give myself that peace and quiet to wait for my unconscious mind to come back to me and say, actually, it's this. And when you get into that habit of sitting quietly for those moments, you'll have unbidden thoughts pop into your mind on a more regular basis. But it works. I didn't believe it until I started doing it for myself. But it works. When you take that moment to go inward and settle within yourself. And that's really why I did the visualization for you, because it will give you that space to stop for, well, it's about 11 minutes. And just allow your unconscious mind to just calm down and relax and just say, actually, this is what I need you to know. This is what I need you to work on to help you to be better. So it'll come. And don't be afraid of the things that come up. Trust in your unconscious mind. Trust that the things that come to you quietly are the things that you really need to work on. Because there's no judgment or criticism. You certainly can't judge and criticize yourself for the things you didn't know you didn't know. You can't judge and criticize yourself for making choices and decisions with the things that were in your hand at the time. What you can do is be compassionate to yourself, thoughtful, loving, considerate, and make space for yourself. And it doesn't matter whether you are a man or a woman. What matters is that you are being completely honest and clear with yourself. Because when you start to do that, your values become pathways towards your experience rather than the rules that everybody else has laid down for you. They point in the right direction, whichever that direction is that you need to take, rather than somebody else laying a demand at your feet, an expectation. And so your energy becomes gentler and calmer and safer. Connection is one of those things that often points you to safety or depth. For me, that comes when I'm at networking for business or I'm at personal networking groups, personal friendship groups. And those things are so important because when you're in a conversation, other people ask questions. They make you think on the spot, but when your values are healthy, you can come out with stronger, more balanced answers. When your values aren't healthy, that's the time when you want to shrink quietly into yourself and go, what the do I say there? I can't actually answer the question because I don't know. You see the difference in that energy. It's powerful. It also gives freedom. When your values are healthy, it gives you so much more freedom, emotional freedom, because it's pointing you to choice that's easy and comfortable rather than something that is demanding. And there are some other exercises in the book that you'll discover. And I'd like you to take your time and treat yourself gently. It's why I've given you the rest day for Thursday, because there's actually more work than you realise will come from this. And I want you to have that time to do it without the pressure. Because on Friday, we're going to start bringing all these things together. And I'm going to show you how they all come together. And then on Sunday is the masterclass, bringing everything into play so that everything is so much more powerful and much stronger for you. So that you can go away with tools, powerful, powerful tools. And that's the whole premise of this journey. Because wanting is not selfish. It's a part of being alive. It returns you to safety and honesty when your needs are fully met. And this is all about listening and learning so that your internal compass can recalibrate itself and the way you navigate life can be so much happier and healthier. Because when your energy is happier and healthier, two things happen. You begin to feel like a new person. You begin to blossom and grow. And the other thing that happens is going to take us back to a little science lesson we all had at school when we were very small. Our world is made of atoms. One atom moves the next atom, moves the next atom, moves the next atom. So as we change our energy and our energy becomes healthier and stronger and more inviting to the people around us, that energy, those atoms, are pinging off of us and going all around the world. And it takes time for those atoms to travel around the world because they are always traveling. But eventually, the energy from those atoms will land on or around our children. They won't know what they're feeling. Their unconscious bodies will recognize our energy. And they may start to change how they're behaving. I say may because we can't control them. But we can plant unconscious energy seeds by sending that energy of ours, which is healthy and strong and vibrant, out into the world. You see it when you see those black and white images coloured up for entertainment programs and films and, you know, all of these things that we see where you suddenly you have a black and white image and all of a sudden the colour jumps from the screen and it fills up every single part. That's how our energy works. And because our energy works like that, we have no control over it. The control we have is to make that energy healthy and wholesome and support us and love us and nurture us. And the way to do that is to sit and do the deep work on our values. So your workbooks will be out into the system very shortly, as into the Facebook group, as will this recording. And I invite you to take some time to sit with yourself and really enjoy the process of discovering parts of you that you've never really given credence to before. Because I know that you will find this so, so much nicer. And I'm so excited for you for this journey. So I'd like to thank you all for joining me in this journey. I'd like to thank you today for taking the time to be with me. And I look forward to seeing your thoughts, your ahas, your takeaways, and your learnings on the thread in the page. And don't forget the competition. I have a small program that I would like to share with the winner, and there will be a runner-up prize as well. You never know, there might be more than one runner-up prize, and I might have to work out that if 2 or 3 of you have watched everything and done everything and answered everything and been at the main recording on Sunday, I might have more than one bigger prize to give away. But I can only leave that in your capable hands. So I'm really looking forward to the rest of this journey with you. And on this beautiful, yes, beautiful sunny Wednesday, although it's very grey in the background, I'm going to bid my leave, say thank you, and I'll see you again on Friday afternoon.